Okay, this is a tutorial for TES Alliance on getting a collision in from Max. I have a written tutorial on there already, so I figured I'd make a video tutorial and show you exactly how to do it, when to use it, etc. So I just made this table. This seat already has collision on it, but we'll show you how to get this one going. It's fairly simple. The first thing we want to do is we can do this multiple different ways. Say, let me just go over this real quick. This is how I would do this. I want to get a real low poly mesh for my collision. I don't want to make anything fancy, and basically because I'll show you in a second. You can only make a convex shape with it. So I just basically want to outline this table with a box. I don't want it too far up on the box. Alright. And we'll convert that to an editable poly. You can right click and convert to editable poly. Or mesh, it doesn't matter. Makes no difference. Let's add a swift loop. Pretty much where it's going to bend. To do this, graphite modeling tools, loops. Well, it's around here somewhere. Oh, it's edit, swift loop, and that allows you to put one in here. And I'm just going to grab these bottom verts, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. We'll make one more swift loop. Come on now, don't be scared. Let me constrain that by the edge. Ah! What am I doing? Yeah. Can't have that one axis. So this is our collision mesh. And we can call it whatever we want. I just usually call it call for collision. And we hit 6 to get out of the subobject mode. And now what we want to do, actually first, let me delete this real quick. And save as. We'll make this a table. Let me put it in a layer and hide it. And I really want to make sure when I do export any meshes for Skryim, I have it at zeros and the move transform. You can do that by right clicking, select and move up here. Now let's unhide this, and hopefully that slides right on there. It doesn't, that's okay. We need to That's probably why. What we need to do is we need to come in and first move it to where we want. Actually, before that, we need to come over here into the hierarchy tab and effect pivot only and center to object. I have these on hotkeys, obviously, but it's the same thing. Same thing here. Effect pivot only, center to object. It's massively important. And let me explain what I just did. Shift A will align it exactly how I want it. So now everything is the pivot is centered and all of the good stuff is centered. We can I'm not sure why I did that. Okay, so everything is centered. Where we want it. Now let's get down to what we want to do. This is important. Hold down L and make sure we pick the top one. And this is select and uniform scale. Now we right click. When everything is centered and all of it's 0 and this should be 100. We need to change it all to 10. Enter. I guess I could be hitting tab. 10 tab 10, and I have a weird unit set up right now for what I was doing in architecture, but essentially that's all you need to do. It needs to be 10. Let's just assume that that was at 200. You need to turn it to 20, so it's 10% of what it was. I hope that you can understand that. Now this should be call. There it is. It's call. We want to go into the modifier list, and you have to have the NIF tools that you can find in Skryim Nexus for 3ds Max. I'm on 2012. We need to go to BHK rigid body, and this is why I did what I did, because you'll notice that it defaults typically. The material doesn't matter. We can always change that in NIF scope, but it defaults to strip shape. We can't use that. We can only use convex shape. Now, see if we can see this. You see how the convex shape this works? So even though it's not going to follow the contours of my mesh, it's only going to follow from point to point to point and X this out. You see how that works? So let's say that you've got you've got a plane, and oops, cancel. I guess I should hold shift and do this. Yep. So you have a wall. This is your walkway. This is your wall. A convex shape. This is why you can't do any architecture with 3ds Max. You have to use chunk merge. The convex shape is going to be from here to here. So if you walked on this collision, you'd be walking at an angle right up here at the 45. So this is exactly why this only works pretty much on clutter objects. And you can make clutter objects that you can kick around and things like that. It's fairly simple. So let me just remove this, go back, and let me recap. We made the collision object around this. We put a modifier, BHK rigid body modifier on it. You can change the material to stone. Always has to be convex shape, always. None of this I'm aware of. I wouldn't optimize it. This can be changed again in NIF scope. I don't even know if this exports correctly. So this is the first thing we have to do. The second thing we have to do is go back to the create tab, the orange, go over to helpers, go to NIF tools, and find BHK rigid body. And ideally we want to click on this, but you'll notice that it didn't line up. That's okay. We'll just right click and we'll use Shift A to line it up to our little mesh here. That's what we're looking for. Does it have to be exactly on top of that? For smaller objects, maybe not, but it will affect it. So we need to go back into the Modify tab, and we need to add the collision mesh. Just by clicking on it, there we go. There's our call. We can actually highlight this and remove it. Another way to do it is to add with this add, and then you hit the H key, and then come pick it, and it will add it like that. Or, of course, hit the add, and then come over here to select by name. Same thing. That's what H does. So now that we got that in there, you can change the material. This is what, when you hit it or walk on it, this is what it sounds like. It plays the correct thing. If you hit it with a sword, it sounds like stone. If you wanted wood stairs or whatever. Mainly I stick with this up here. Heavy stone, heavy metal 2 is fine. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. Always make sure that when you have this on here, your mass is at 0, so you can right click the spinners to get back to 0. All of this doesn't matter. It can also be changed. The motion system can be changed, typically on 7, quality 7, allow transforms, and I mean this is essentially it. That's all that needs to be done. And we'll just go into export. We want to export all of it. Oops. Cancel. I don't know what's doing that to me. Make sure we find Netimmerse Gamebryo, which is the KF and NIF. Name it whatever you want. Make sure collision is on. This is the most important. NIF without animation transforms. You can remove anything on the skin modifier doesn't have one. I would just keep sort nodes on there. Make sure it's BFS fade node. Sometimes this doesn't export right, so we can change that in NIF scope. Make sure it's on Skryim. Export. Now we have to go into NIF scope. And let's go with our, here's this guy that we got, and see, as you can tell, it's a 9 node. So the first thing, we just want to go down the list. The first thing we need to do is go to block, convert, BS fade node. So now that's a BS fade node. It changed the other ones, and now we'll just come in here and open all the trees up. What we're looking for is the BHK collision object. Underneath that, we'll open it up. The first one is BHK rigid body T. We are going to you can change this. Sometimes you might have to change to an anim static or a clutter if you're making a movable static, but typically just leave it at this. We are looking for unknown 7 shorts. The first one will typically always be 0. The bottom one will be 0. We need 2 and 3 to remain default. So we'll start from the bottom. We'll 0 all these out, leaving only these 2 remaining in unknown 7 shorts. Now here's where we could add mass. Like, say that we wanted a movable whatever. 1 is a pretty good starting place for moving it around. I mean, if it's like a small candle or something, I was kicking around a candle. I kept it at 1. It was fine. All of this stuff changes. You can change it. All of it affects it. The friction affects how it operates on it. Most of this is pretty decent. This is way too much in game. Actually, I usually put it on 2. This is the penetration depth, 0.005. It's basically whenever you hit something, how far your sword goes into it. Try to keep it as small as possible, especially if you're kicking it around. And if you do want to have something to kick around, this is what you would change. These 4 things is what you would typically look at, and it would be dynamic, we're not going to change it though. This, I don't really know exactly what this does. I left it off. I left it at spatial. It didn't seem to affect it. But this is the important one. Moqual fix. Come on now. And it's either debris or moving. Both did essentially the same thing. We're going to leave it at fixed because, of course, we're making static. It's not going to move. Next is down here. This is typically what was in the... You can't change it, but down here in Skryim material, this is, I think, what really affects it. So we'll just change it to stone. And here's the important bit. Radius. We have to take away the first 2 numbers. Sometimes you'll have, like, it'll be a number like this. So instead of the first 2 numbers, it'll be the first 3. So what we want to do is just come in and 0 this out. And that should be perfect. And that is exactly how you get collision into Skryim. Of course, you come in and change all your other stuff, but essentially that's all there is to it. I hope this helps.